We're here.
Well, hello.
And this is like it's like being born again, because the last time that this looked like this was when you did the first show.
Yeah.
So a lot has changed. So Jen, please tell everybody why the background looks the way that it does.
Yeah. So we're moving. I'm moving, and this is my house.
I'm not moving with you.
Well, you can come to the new studio location.
I don't think I could come here and do the show, so that probably.
Well, the new owner of this house might not appreciate you showing up.
That's probably a good point.
Yeah. So I'm moving tomorrow morning, and I've lived in this house for 13 years. So, which is the longest I've ever lived in any one house. So
big change.
Yeah, and we're downsizing. So there's currently a dumpster in front of my house, which I didn't know you could rent dumpsters, but you can. And if I had known this, I would have done this so many times. Like it's so cleansing. I feel so good. Like I love it. Like I think what holds me back from cleansing a lot is just knowing that bulk pickup is only once a month.
Well, that is a problem.
And I love my dumpster. I'm so happy. I'm so happy. So like everything, I'll ask Jason, I'm like, do you want this? And he looks at it, I'm like, I got a dumpster. So yeah. I don't even care.
Well, you don't want to be hoarding anything. So
no, he's a hoarder. I am not a hoarder. I'm an over cleanser. Yeah, I over cleanse. Yeah, he's a hoarder.
So obviously we have a great discussion this evening.
Yeah.
As you guys know, we have the UBI itch, we have the Yang Gang itch. We had Andrew on the podcast the other day, and the gentleman we are bringing on is a former guest of the show. Looking forward to having him back. He is what we like to call the UBI guru. Hopefully we'll get more eyeballs on this show.
You got to tweet it.
Yeah, okay. I guess I'm going to splash it on social media.
Normally you do that.
So he recently wrote an article that we're going to discuss, which obviously is something that we have been advocating for, and we're so thrilled that one of the true leaders of the UBI movement sees the value of bringing UBI and MMT together.
It's like a marriage.
Yeah, which you need to work on. So without further ado, welcome back to Generational Change. Scott Santens, how are you, brother?
I'm good, thanks. Good to see you again.
Hi, thanks for coming back. We're always trying to build bigger and bigger coalitions, and the more we make crossovers and connections between concepts for people, it's like, I feel like we're building this bigger picture that a lot of people haven't been understanding when they say, how are you going to pay for it? And they need to see how it all works together. So if you would talk a little bit about your recent article and, what you're really trying to accomplish.
Yeah, I think if I were to kind of summarize this, and again, just for anyone who hasn't read the article, this is a long read. This took me like almost a year to write, when including all the research and everything involved. And so it's almost like a small book. It's around like 14,000 words. It'll take you over an hour to read. It'll take you over an hour to listen to. So it's tough to even just summarize in just a few minutes. But I would say like the main points that I really want to get across is that we need to step outside of this understanding of money, or even say a misunderstanding of money as it presently exists, where we keep trying to like raise money in order to do stuff.
Right.
And, we're in the United States. We literally create our own money. We have a sovereign currency, and that's not the issue. And so the thing about MMT that gets this correct, as far as saying that, look, the US creates the money, it puts it into the system, and then taxes take the money out of the system. And we even saw this on display just with our own, eyes with COVID. And as far as like when this happened, then boom, like the money went out there. It's not like we did like some crowdfunding campaign for the United States and we said like, please, everyone, help us buy our treasuries so that we can spend our money. Like, no, that's not what happened. We spent it. And then after the fact, then we said, oh, well, let's go ahead and issue these treasury securities and stuff. And let's not worry about taxes for now, because that's not, we don't want to slow down the economy. So that's accurate as far as saying, look, we just need to get the money out there. The question then becomes, how much money can we get out there? What is the best way to go about, say, non-cash programs as far as like the benefits and stuff that the US does? And what else can we do other than taxation to, let's say, manage inflation. So this shifts the conversation from how do we come up with enough money to what is the total amount of resources that we have? What is our economic capacity to actually do things? Like our limits are real limits. Our limits are, okay, what's our technology? What are our resources? What are our people? What are our skills? What's our knowledge? What is everything that we can do? And the question then becomes, how do we do like the most with the least? Like we don't want to be doing things that are entirely unnecessary, and we don't want to be doing things that overlap. We want to, in order to maximize our theoretical economic capacity, then we want to essentially drain out like all of the extraneous stuff. And we also want to be not only looking at taxes as a means of managing capacity, but about, things like increasing our supplies, investing in our supply chains. Like as an example of this is when Biden recently, upped the ports in LA, to 24/7. And so like that's a way of increasing our supply, improving our supply chains to reduce inflation. So that's like an example of, we don't have to always just tax to reduce inflation. There are other things to do too. And so I like this kind of all-encompassing, looking at the economy as a whole system. What are the things we can do best, and using like really evidence-based decision-making and policy-making in order to really maximize what we can achieve as a country, and really set about like thinking about what is it that we want to do, and if we can do it, then let's do it. So, you look at climate change, you're like,
Yeah.
that's a problem. Let's invest in that. Let's do it. Like, we're not limited. So I just want us to break us out of that.
Yeah, you're sounding scary. You're using words like using reason and thinking. And these things are not usually what we go on anymore. We go on like political sound bites and teams and tribalism, and nobody stops to really think it through. And they're so quick to just be on their team. I was just watching a clip of Joe Manchin talking about why we can't afford the Build Back Better, why we cannot afford this, and about that we have the deficit and da 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 da. And he says it with all sincerity, and people believe that because that's their team, and so they just believe that. And I'm sitting here thinking he might as well sound like the teacher from Charlie Brown, and and they'll all sit there going, yeah, right, exactly. And yet nobody called him on this. I don't know. Did you catch any of that? That he said, we can't afford this?
Oh yeah. I mean, it's just such a common thing. And that's the like part of the problem that I even was worried about as soon as we actually started getting out all the stimulus checks and everything that we did. Like, we spent all those trillions, and it's like, that was the exact thing to do. But then I knew that like we would come around to the point where people would be like, oh, we've spent so much, we have to like not do that anymore. We're worried about the deficit and the debt and all these things. And so because of this like perceived limit to what we can do, then suddenly it's like, oh, we can't do another 3.5 trillion. I, as a, non-economist, say, in the voice of like Manchin or Cinema or something, and they're thinking, well, we can only do 1.5 trillion. But we only do 1 trillion. Like, they're drawing these like arbitrary lines,
right.
and saying we got to stay under there.
It's made up, right?
Yeah.
Right. That's what I think. And I think it's just austerity warfare. This is like, this is what they're wanting to do, is just keep the rich and, let the poor get poor. This is all intentional. Like, that's what I think.
Yeah, and I think the whole idea about bringing the masses more into the conversation, and I think what you're doing is great. And we did have I wouldn't even say it was necessarily a debate, but we had Tom Long of Nerds for Humanity, and we had Steve Grumbine of the Real Progressives, and it wasn't so much that there was an argument between them, but there was definitely arguments in the chat.
Oh my God, talk about tribalism.
There's like this: no, UBI is the right way, no, MMT is the right way. Hey guys, we could have both. I mean, it's just a thought, and I think this is honestly a great transition right into it about, what Andrew's doing. He was on the podcast the other day. The biggest obstacle, I think, to really having this coalition that could turn into a new political party is credibility. And I think Andrew has it in spades. I think he is a very solid leader. And I think the idea of really focusing on these types of coalitions, hey, you support MMT? Well, the Forward Party is going to support that. You support UBI? The Forward Party is going to support that. And we are not going to be a corporate party like the other two are. What are your thoughts on where things stand right now and how you see the trajectory of the Forward Party as we attempt to build these coalitions like an MMT and UBI marriage, if you will?
So the thing about the Forward Party that I think is important is that it's trying to mobilize and organize people around very necessary democracy reforms. And this is something that Yang learned through experience of the process, is thinking that, even if you have really popular programs like Medicare for All, like universal basic income, even we're seeing this right now with like the giant reconciliation bill and all the things in it, and the things that are really popular and the things that are like being pushed out of it, even though it's extremely popular. Like how is it that we can, get Medicare pricing, pushed out as far as the ability to negotiate that pricing? Like these things that are really popular are not passing. So you can't just run on popular things. And that's what people need to understand, is that the system itself needs to be changed. There needs to be reforms made. And so the challenge there too is that you can't do this in a partisan way. At least I feel that if you were to go about that way, then you're just going to have the partisan pushback response, and then you're going to have a polarized issue around democracy reforms. And I feel that we're already seeing that. I was like really worried about this happening when as soon as Trump lost and he started pushing this, like, oh, the thing that Republicans need to do now is, get rid of mail-in voting and get rid of, he was focusing on democracy reforms in the other way. And before that, it was bipartisan. So that's a real challenge, is to get people to think outside of their partisan tribes and both agree on the fact that we do need to make these reforms that are completely nonpartisan, that we need to do things like open primaries, like ranked choice voting, like we need to do things like, public matching of funds for so that people, smaller donors, can be amplified to donate against, the crowd out this big money, things like democracy vouchers. I'm a huge fan of things like the Fair Representation Act, as far as like saying, look, we need to end gerrymandering. So we can't just say, let's do independent redistricting. Let's actually remove the ability to even gerrymander by saying, let's actually split states up into multiple representative districts and then use ranked choice voting to actually achieve proportional representation. Like these kinds of things would improve the way our democracy works. And that would be beneficial to both parties, as long as both parties are pushing ideas that are popular.
And therein lies the problem. So we know, like, this is what I've said for a long time. We know we're in a completely non-functioning republic when you could pick any popular issue. It could be Medicare for all. It could be anything. And you have the majority of people that vastly support it. Both parties even. There's so many issues. And yet it doesn't happen. That's a broken republic. And it's because we have people that are elected by like 1% of the country when it comes down to who votes, whose votes are suppressed, how it all, like the amount of people that show up and vote is the biggest problem. And so very few people are electing people, and then they're just sitting there forever.
Yeah, although I'd also say too that I don't want to blame the voters, because really there's just so much of like the system that's involved in that.
Oh, yeah.
Like if you feel that the system isn't responsive, then you're not going to vote, or you're going to be made hyper partisan, and it's just going to be kind of this extreme reaction. And we have to create the incentives so that people actually work together, that it makes sense for it to be bipartisanship in Congress. Like right now it doesn't make sense, because if you do that, you're going to be outed in the primary. And so, like, we have to actually create this system where people can work together, where it makes less sense to be partisan, and where it makes more sense to work together, both across party lines and with your entire constituency. Like, that's the thing that I really like about multi-representative districts, is that then instead of me only being represented by one person who happens to be a Democrat right now, then I could actually be represented by, say, another, say, a Republican and a Democrat, or even like a Republican, a Democrat, and an independent, or a Green Party, or something like that, depending on how my larger district votes. And I think that when you have multiple people in the same districts, you're going to have more people working together because they're actually working together. So it's this, I really, it's so difficult. It has been very challenging to get people energized to actually do these reforms. And so hopefully that's the big thing that Andrew Yang will bring to this, is to actually energize people to do these reforms, because then it's exciting to actually be able to vote for more than your party, that you're able to vote for the Forward Party, Green Party, whatever you feel better matches what you're going for. And that the government will be responsive. Like, that's what so much this problems comes down to, that you're seeing this rise of authoritarianism, is that the government is not responsive. And so what do? Well, then that's how strongmen come to power. And so,
right, then you elect a demagogue because you need somebody to save you.
Right, somebody do something.
Yeah, but it's like I feel like I'm watching it in slow motion, because they're setting it up for it to happen kind of again. Like, they're doing the exact same things. It's like watching it on repeat. Do you get that feeling?
What are the lessons you think can be taken from what happened last night? Obviously,
it's going to be a beating in 22 for the Dems, is what I get.
And even the response today, Scott, the way that the Democratic establishment,
I'm so not pleased.
Like this smidgen of additional stuff that they now want to put into the reconciliation bill. No, put the reconciliation bill back at $3.5 trillion, include public tuition-free public college, include the Medicare expansion.
But how are they going to pay for it?
Yeah, I know, really. How are they going to pay for it, Scott? How's it possible?
How are they going to pay for it? Tell everyone how they can pay for it.
So again, the big problem going into 2022 is the fact that we do have higher inflation, but that's a good thing. We're in a circumstance where we have done the right thing. We have chosen to strive for full employment. We're running the economy hot. We're making sure that demand has been sustained. And by doing that, we can actually focus on supply chains and focus on making sure that the labor market's improved, that for the first time, workers have bargaining power to a degree that we haven't seen in decades, that low-wage jobs are actually having to increase their wages and improve their benefits, improve their hours in order to find workers, that this is the right thing to do. The consequence of that is that you have this higher rate of inflation, and that is what essentially Republicans are able to weaponize, because also we don't expect this inflation to go down, anytime soon. It will go down, possibly sometime in 2022, 2023, back to the standard 2% that the Fed has been striving for. But the Republicans are going to continue to say, oh, look at inflation. This is why we can't do anything. This is why the Democrats have messed up. And this is why we can't spend any more. And so the fact that people misunderstand how money works and how inflation works is helping Republicans to get what they want. That's like the big challenge here, is that, by using the filibuster, by stopping anything from happening, by claiming that there's nothing to be done, that by crying out at inflation and fears about hyperinflation, then people are going to be afraid, and they're going to say, oh, well, we can't do this. I really think that we should do these things, that they're popular, but we just can't. Look at what it's doing. It's making prices more expensive. And so we need to vote for Republicans instead. And it's a real danger and a real trap. They know exactly what they're doing. And it's really it's important to people to understand how inflation works.
Yes, but but also not all Democrats are the same, because I said, you have Joe Manchin standing there and basically giving that every one of those talking points. So that's part of the problem.
And then, of course, you have a very big problem on the left, which is not just nihilism, but this Puritanism when it comes to forming these coalitions.
Tribalism.
Saw what happened to Andrew, particularly when he ran for mayor. We mentioned this on the podcast the other day. Everybody wanted to really focus in on the comments he made in regards to Israel. And if you disagree with that, you can disagree, obviously, with, the private consulting firm that he was working with. But when it came to the primary issues, especially when it came to not just UBI and the test, the testing that he's done, which has been very effective. The fact that he was the one candidate who was advocating for the New York Health Act. Let's face it, Capitol Hill's broken. It looks like a lot of the policies that we really want are going to have to come through at the state level. And there's precedent for that, not just passing universal health care in Canada, but passing a lot of policies at the state level, whether it is legalization of cannabis, whether it is marriage equality. It's been proven to be done already. And so the fact that he was the only candidate that was pushing for that, I thought was immensely important
and way more important.
But then everybody was like throwing him under the bus as like he was like the worst guy running,
because we all know that the mayor of New York has a very important impact on the validity of the state of Israel.
I really do think that the nihilism, and this is the thing that the left really doesn't understand, is that when you don't understand what it means to build coalitions, you end up with a Mayor Eric Adams. That's how that happens. And the other thing that Andrew did, as alluding to that point, he was the only person who took full advantage of ranked choice voting. He said, well, if I don't get it, I want the person who is probably going to do the most damage control out of anybody, and that would be Catherine Garcia. Now, Catherine didn't seem like she reciprocated it, but anybody who's paying attention recognizes what Andrew did.
Yeah.
And he was this close to preventing Adams from becoming mayor. If he didn't do what he did, it wouldn't have even been close. But he selflessly said, look, if it can't be me, let it at least be somebody who will not do as much damage as Eric
Andrew's
did.
a team player.
And I really hope that more people start to wake up and realize that he may not be all of what you want, but my goodness, is he on our side?
Yeah. And so part of that problem was that people still don't understand how ranked choice voting works. It's so new that strategies weren't built around this. And so I was hoping that through the race itself that people would catch on. It really bothered me when I watched both of the debates, and each time they asked the question, who would you rank below you? And so everyone except for Yang, and I can't remember who else, one other time said that they would vote for someone. Everyone just gave the answer as, oh, I'm just going to vote for myself, or I just don't think there's anyone else. It's like there's no reason at all why Eric Adams should have won, because all it needed was 3 people to get together and say, we are an alliance, and if you don't vote for me, vote for them, and Eric Adams would not have won.
But see, people are so feckless. Like they just really, they're not thinking about the big picture. They're not thinking about what they say they're really concerned about. They're really concerned about themselves, because every single one of those people absolutely knows who they would rather be if it weren't them. Every one of them knows that. They just don't have the balls to say it.
We unfortunately had a situation just like that, and I wish the campaign got more attention. But
just today,
Sheila Sherflowis McCormick, who you may have heard of, she ran for Congress in the open district, Florida's 20th congressional district. She was endorsed by brand new Congress, and that obviously was a big deal. She didn't get as much support as I would have liked. I mean, we really pushed for it, but at the end of the day, we had an opportunity to support her through the Progressive Caucus in the state. And there was another gentleman who was running. But the one thing that I made very clear to them, because these 2 candidates were the 2 non-corporate candidates running in the race, and they both had a lot of great policies that they were running on. Sheila happened to be running specifically on Medicare for all, UBI, and a living wage.
And had run twice prior and had name recognition in this district.
The gentleman who decided to jump into the race was somebody who was really new to the scene, but was really hardcore to the left. Now, you can make the argument that he was too left, and I think that that's valid. But what really comes down to here is name recognition and fundraising. One candidate had $100,000 to their name, and the other had $2 million. And they decided to endorse the candidate with $100,000. The candidate with $100,000, who, again, we do like
very much,
is very likely going to end up being the spoiler if she doesn't win, because the amount of voting that he ended
It's
up
going to
getting
come
was
down
a
to
little-
that.
It was about 5%.
And
Yeah.
he pulled from her. Absolutely pulled from her.
And again, the issue, again, and Jabari, this ain't a time for an argument. I'm basically saying, if you know the district and you know that if you make certain comments that are going to be incendiary and they're going to drive the core,
Right. We
voting
don't
base,
think it's too left. He
we're
was
talking
suggesting
about it
like
from the people who are actually going to go out to the polls. And vote.
that when he
Yeah.
made the comment that he did about supporting BDS, that was too far left for the district. That's what he meant. We're not making a personal
And
assessment
again,
on it.
Sheila wasn't somebody who was advocating, for MMT the way that Omari Hardy, that gentleman's name, the way that he was advocating for. But at the end of the day, if you're trying to win and you're trying to enact change, the left has to get better at strategy. That is something that is severely lacking. And I would imagine that is something that you have seen is something that we are really lacking in and need to work on.
Yeah, and also, again, this just speaks to ranked choice voting, where no one should be in that position where there is a spoiler. Like, you should be able to vote for your favorite person. You should be able to vote for your second favorite person. You should be able to vote for your third favorite person. None of these should actually prevent who you most want from winning to win, creating the situation where the person that you really don't want to win wins. There's no reason for that to happen. And it's constantly been annoying to me. Just this, ever since I got into voting. I mean, this is something that's annoyed me since 18, as far as this inability to vote for a third party, or the third party being blamed each time. And of course, this also fits into primaries with third candidates, fourth candidates, everything else. But there's always this blame on the voters for voting for someone other than like the top two. And there's this blame on the candidates for even running. Like, how dare they run on, these other issues and provide another option? You only are allowed to really vote for two. I know it says that you can vote for others, but really, realistically, you can only vote for two. It's like, well, no, that's just crap. Like, we need to make a system where you actually can vote for who you want for, and then we don't have these problems, and you don't have friends eating each other. You wouldn't have progressives being their own worst enemy. Like, you could actually be forming these coalitions that are so important, and it would not be resulting in these worst outcomes.
Yeah, I agree.
And I definitely think that is something that we did see. Most people would agree that ranked choice voting, especially in a race that had so many candidates, I think there was like 11, something like that. And 19, I think, was the total number. But we're talking about actual viability in terms of, raising money, having a chance to win, got votes, things like that. And when you have that many candidates in a race, you would think that, all right, well, I like this candidate for this reason. I like this candidate for that reason. I'd like to support multiple candidates. And ultimately, I know there's only going to be one winner, but that's where the whole concept of ranked choice voting comes into play. And the one thing that Florida in particular is good about, we're not good at a lot of things, but we are good at getting ballot initiatives passed. That is one thing that our state does well. Again, this state went for Trump by like 3.5 points, I believe. So that's, by Florida standards, that's a comfortable win. And we still were able to pass a $15 minimum wage, and that took over 60% of the vote.
Yeah, actually, more people voted for the $15 minimum wage than voted for Donald Trump.
And that, to me, I really do think speaks to the fact that we're not as divided as a lot of people think. And we brought this up, with Andrew the other night. I really think that progressives and libertarians have a lot more in common than they don't. And we are forced to believe that there is sort of like this dynamic of, no, we are completely separate. We are not the same. No, there are philosophical differences in terms of how to spend money. I understand that. But overall, when it comes to things like even healthcare to this point, civil liberties, the wars, things like that, there really is a lot that we can find common ground on. Again, there are a lot of differences, but there are a lot of similarities. Do you see the ability to really expand that coalition? Because I really think that that's what Andrew's trying to do here, is just try to, again, it's all about corporate special interest money. You can cast the net as wide as you want. I'll work with anybody as long as they're not bought and paid for by the machine. Are you feeling the same way?
Yeah. I've long felt that if you were to look at the left and right, there's kind of like a top and bottom too. So there's kind of like a quadrant, and there's no reason at all where you can't find these coalitions instead of pegging people into one of only two groups, especially to say like, oh, you're either a racist or not a racist. Like, that's a terrible way to divide all of the country and just ignoring all policies and everything. Like, if you ask people about specific policy questions, then there's going to be a lot of agreement between all sides, right? Between centrist Democrats and centrist Republicans, between progressives and actually libertarians, that there are things we can agree on. But then instead, there are actually, when it comes to these real kind of tribal issues, especially things that are made hyper-partisan, then people will vote along those lines. We're even seeing that, through COVID, as far as like that was just one of the worst things ever, I feel, as far as how the vaccines themselves were made to be partisan. And then you had mask wearing be made, very partisan. And so you've got this like really weird divide now where wearing a mask or getting vaccinated is the way you express being in a particular tribe, and that tribe votes in a specific way, and that's it. Like, that's the most important thing, is this one thing. It has to be, you go down the ballot and it's either all red or all blue, and nothing else matters. But it's not accurate, and we should actually enable people to really be more policy focused and be more coalition focused. And again, it really comes down to structure. As long as we're in this system where there is a spoiler effect and there's this two parties where you have to choose one or the other, then it's going to end up being this way. So that's why we have to.
And I like your
change that.
shirt. I like your shirt, because your
Thanks.
shirt is the exact same, is the point we are making. And it's true. That's exactly right. We need to be going forward. But of course, we know we're being purposefully distracted by the establishment in both parties like to keep their people distracted and focused on like red flag things instead of, the economy's stupid, and that's sort of, to me. And I feel like it is intentional. The distraction, the circus, the nonsense, it's very intentional. And it makes for clicks.
And I really do think we're going to have a very unique opportunity, not necessarily in the midterms, but I think in 24, because I really think that
the Dems are going to have a beating in 22. It's going to be a bloodbath, people.
Yeah, but we're really heading towards, I think, a President DeSantis right now. And when something like that happens, you have to say, well, what are our choices? I really think that it's sort of like a perfect storm situation, because I think people are aching for a new path. I think people really want to try to do something different. They just need to feel like there's the legitimacy behind it, that, okay, well, if I'm going to get involved, I want to make sure I'm not wasting
And again,
my time.
they would get involved if we had ranked choice voting and they didn't worry about the spoiler. That's the problem. Oh, we love pets.
Yes.
If you're petting your pet, because I saw a tail. I saw a fluffy tail. Is that a cat or a dog? Oh, is that
Chihuahua.
What kind of, is that like it's a Chihuahua?
Yeah, he's a long-haired Chihuahua.
Long-haired Chihuahua. He's old, right?
Oh no, he's 4.
He just has white coloring. Like, he just has that on his face. It's not from being gray.
Yeah, his dad is like all white hair and his mom is all black hair, and it's just a mix.
Oh, so cute. Oh yeah, how do we get them to turn off the mainstream news? I don't watch it.
Yeah, we're facing a really big.
I can't watch that.
That's another thing, Scott, about the coalition building that we really emphasize is, a lot of times the non-corporate independent news networks on YouTube in particular, a lot of people are not really working together in the sense of recognizing that, look, corporate media like CNN, MSNBC, Fox News, they may be at odds with each other, but when it comes to independent news, they'll work together to stop us. Like, that's their goal. Their goal is to not allow this type of a message to get out there. So if we're not working together, what are we supposed to do? And I really think that we need to continue to emphasize the importance of really building that message and really getting it out there. And like I said, that's why I really do think Andrew's onto something here. No disrespect to the Movement for the People's Party, but it's pretty clear that the credibility and the legitimacy rests in whether or not this party, the Forward Party, is able to take off. The right ideas are there. And I do think that there is a lot of interest. And again, when Marianne Williamson is showing up, when Mark Cuban is showing up, when somebody like Dave Chappelle, or even, dare I say, a Joe Rogan starts taking interest in things like that.
Now we're going to start getting flamed in the
comments.
comments.
When you can really, but that's really when you can take this thing and turn it into something big. And that's where the conversations like MMT and UBI can get bigger and bigger and bigger.
Yeah, I also just want to add too that, again, what Andrew Yang is doing, and I think is so important, is to focus on the incentives. Like, we really need to align the incentives better. And so, like, in my MMT UBI piece, it's really focused on how do you do that? Like, how do you do taxes in a way that aligns incentives? How do you do, spending in a way that makes sense? But this extends to this conversation too when it comes to the media. And so it's even not so simple as to say like mainstream bad, alternative media good, because the incentives are misaligned in both. Like, you can find good mainstream media and you can find good alternative media, and you can also find good quote mainstream media and alternative media coming up with bad, like, misinformed, uninformed pieces that they're getting out there, along with good, and vice versa. But so part of this big problem, I think, is this advertising model, and about the way that social media works, that just these small system changes can have massive impacts on society. Like, who would have thought back when Facebook changed from just like a like button to the ability to express like anger and happiness and love and hugs and all that kind of thing, be able to like emote as a reaction, that the result of that would actually be this engine for increasing anger in society, because the algorithm picks up on that anger content works better, keeps people on Facebook longer. So then the algorithm kicks that up more and say, oh, if that's going to make you angry, then how about this thing? This will make you angry. And so it just fed into this. And all that was just this like engineering change. And it's just this one decision. It's like, oh, I wonder if this would be a good thing to do. And sure, it worked to raise their revenue, but it really completely just like did so much damage to our society and like global human civilization. This affects other countries too, because Facebook is this monolith with billions of users. And so like, we need to change the actual social media ecosystem. We need to change the way advertising fun stuff. That, I think it works better to have subscription models, but even subscription models can have problems, because then you can actually have a platform that's listening to the anger and what their viewers are interested in, and then they can actually do like a feedback mechanism for misinformation. And like, I feel like, not to like go too hard on Joe Rogan, I feel that during the pandemic, he's actually been saying things in a way that created this feedback mechanism that it makes sense for him to like continue to push things like ivermectin and things like that. And I don't think that's good. I think that only pushes people away from accurate information. And it's just so much more challenging to find accurate information. It's so hard to find people that you can trust who really try to like get at what is accurate, what is true, versus what they feel could result in more likes, more listeners, and more money.
Well, we're always fighting. I mean, we're always fighting to get any attention whatsoever. And what's interesting is one of the things we also spoke about with Andrew the other day in his book. Did you read the book? Did you read
Yeah.
forward? Okay. So the whole concept of publicly, well, I didn't actually, Andrew was kind enough to read it to me. So I was really happy that way. But one of the big things was this idea of bringing back local journalism and the importance of local journalism and publicly funding it like you would fund public television. And, that's the kind of stuff that we need to be investing in. And I think he really lays out how much of an impact not having those kinds of local media, what that has sort of done to the discourse, because all people have now is social media and internet media, and there's nothing local because there's no financial motive for local anybody because they can't make money and compete. There's no more local anything. And it's like, that's a big part of the problem because they're like funneling you to their one echo chamber.
Yeah, and I definitely think we saw that with one of our local races where the endorsement was very puzzling, but in a way it seemed like, oh, this was done to kneecap another candidate.
Correct.
So it was but you know what? When you're in it after a while, it's kind of like Andrew having run, obviously a presidential campaign and then ran for, the biggest mayoral race you can possibly run for by far. You kind of really get an idea of exactly how the sausage is made. And in a number of cases, you kind of need to get your ass kicked. You kind of need to experience, just what the machine will do to you. But then you learn from it and you learn what their tricks are. Because the truth is, they don't really have that much. They know how to, they know how to spend money. They know how to do the advertising, but their ideas are terrible and most people don't agree with them. So it's really just a matter of, how do we get the word out there? And that's why the algorithm does what it does. We would have a bigger show if we would just spend time bashing other shows.
Yeah.
And talking about how terrible, I mean, look,
I just can't tolerate that nonsense.
There's one guy, there's one guy who I'm not going to name. And listen, we have a lot of problems with TYT, but this person, all they do is make videos about TYT and talk about how terrible they are. And I'm just thinking,
you have to come up with better content. But that's no different than a candidate that all they do is bash the opponent and they don't offer anything of substance.
Well, that's exactly what happened in Virginia. I mean, that's as good an example with Youngkin winning and focusing on, hey, I'm running to serve you, whereas McAuliffe is running and is basically saying, oh, if you elect this guy, he's scary. Yeah, well, what are you offering? Oh,
I need to know. I need to know her name. What's her name?
There's this a study of social media that was really interesting. And I can't remember if it was mentioned in Andrew's book or if I was just like a different study that I read, but it's related to how if you are in a certain tribe and you tweet about or share something about the out group, then that's going to actually be a lot more shared than if you were to say something about your own in group. So this again is like, if you were to share something about how I think that we should do this good thing, then that's not going to be as shared as saying what they're doing sucks and they're horrible. That's going to be shared more. So that's again, our politics already represent this negative partisanship where it's really about making sure the other side loses. But that's also how social media works. It's how our media ecosystem works, where if you want ratings, if you want clicks, then you have to talk about how the other side sucks. You can't talk about how great things could be, what our side should be doing. It just doesn't work as well. And so, that's it. All these incentives are what we need to change. We have to stop blaming the other side. We have to stop blaming people. We have to blame the systems that we've created. We have to improve these systems where we find they need corrections. So like when Facebook does its own internal research and it finds that what it's done is horrible, then we should have be able to make them change that. Like, we don't want what this horrible thing is. Let's change the system. And that's where things are so frustrating, where that doesn't happen. We're disempowered from doing it. And, what do we do? So politically, we have to do things at the local level. We have to actually do things to, pass the, the anti Corruption Act, which is something that is like is a state by state thing. It's kind of a way of doing ranked choice voting. It's almost like maybe like a state version of like the For the People Act kind of. And so if we can't pass the For the People Act at the federal level, if we can't pass the Freedom to Vote Act at the federal level, then it's absolutely imperative that we pass the Anti-Corruption Act in as many states as we possibly can before 2024. That's just like that. Whatever the shellacking that's going to happen next year, it has to be met by a ginormous mobilization to pass state by state reforms in advance of 2024, or else 2024 is just going to be an absolute,
I agree,
terrible mess.
Yeah, you really hit it on the head. I really think we need to take our foot. I mean, listen, you obviously want to focus on what goes on Capitol Hill, but it's a dead end. And as far as I'm concerned, we could get so much more done if we really started focusing on these statewide initiatives. And there's a lot of interest for that. And
that's how we're going to get ranked choice voting.
Yeah, that's how it's going to happen. And again, we came really close to passing jungle primaries,
which I am not. I'm not a fan of. And the truth is, it kind of has to go in concert with open primaries. I need to know your dog's name.
Well, that's Titus.
Titus? And it's a girl or a boy?
It's a boy.
Titus. Where are you?
I know you're trying to really.
He's over here now.
I know, but he was sitting there with a toy in his mouth that looked bigger than his whole head. And I got to report, that is a dog with a very big sense of self. That is a small dog. Yes, that is a man that is fully confident. And I mean, that is He's taking on the role. Hi, Titus. Oh my God. Yeah, he's so cute.
Well, I always tell people, if you really want to know why Trump is devoid of empathy, he is the first president who didn't own a dog.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, it really does.
It says a lot, doesn't that say something?
Yes, it does. As much as people want to look for reasoning, but
not only that, but another weird thing about him is you've noticed how many times he uses like the dog metaphors. Like he'll he crushed him like a dog. He died like a dog.
I never noticed, like but now I will. Like now I'll notice it.
He has said that so many times. I think like someone out there
Scott,
like counted them.
Scott, that's totally not true. I never said it. Believe me when I tell you, I never said it. I said he was a low down, dirty dog. That's a totally different thing. Totally different. So
that I think it speaks volumes. Look, a lot of us could argue that the past few administrations have been full of war criminals and the like, but they all had dogs.
Yeah, well, I guess they're only partly willing to kill people. One's just completely willing. But again, I think dogs make life better. I think.
Oh my God,
it's a great unifier. I would think.
And the only thing better than a puppy is more puppies.
Yeah.
So what I was going to say, we were talking about like how you were saying, Scott, about how our feeds get filled with this crap, and it just keeps like this vicious cycle going. So I want to tell people like what my feed is full of. And it's like things like first of all, I like Save a Fox Rescue, Life with Malamutes, Asher House, like all of these really like things. So that what pops up on my feed is a golden retriever that adopts like ducks. Like that's the kind of stuff that shows up on my feed.
There is a great person. There's an Instagram account that just started following you. That is it's a golden retriever. It's just a golden retriever.
It doesn't surprise me. I have a lot of friends in that community, and I don't even have a golden retriever, but they're usually the ones that are somehow mothering other species. I don't know why.
Well, I just want to plug Titus's Instagram. Then you can follow him at Tabletop Titus.
Oh, what does he do? What does he do?
Tabletop Titus.
Titus.
Tabletop Titus on Instagram.
That's so cute. That's so cute. What does he do? Like, what does he do to entertain us? Not that I'm on Instagram.
Like chewing on that chew toy is.
It is actually, honestly, it really is. He could just sit there and I would just watch him because his little face around that big toy is really funny.
Come on. We're all about dogs, and we're all about, well, again, I think it's just a sign of humanity.
Well, and Titus is also in the family of dogs. I have a Shih Tzu that I call Snout Challenged. And so.
You're right, John. That is absolutely true.
Dog propaganda. Let me tell you.
If you want to get into a person's heart.
Like, if you were to look on my feed, it's this random thing of like anything from like Chris Hedges and Cornel West to like Life with Malamutes and this couple that lives in the UK with their dog and their,
Why don't more people run for office with their best friend as their companion? They should be doing that. Be like, hey, I'm not only running to help you. Don't have a cute dog.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, and this also just shows too that it not only should be blamed like the algorithm itself, but it's up to what we do as well. Is we're feeding the algorithm, and this is both from the content creator perspective and the user perspective. So if you want to help, then don't click on the things that are meant to piss you off. That don't share things that are meant to make people angry. Try not to feed into that. And focus on, if you can have a feed that like makes you happy instead of makes you angry, then that's helpful.
Yeah,
I have a healthy respect for the feline. I just couldn't share a house with one. Healthy respect. I think they're great. I don't think they want to be owned. I think that their claws are really sharp. I think, healthy respect.
I really do think, though, a lot of what's been going on, and a lot of people are starting to recognize that the constant fighting back and forth, it doesn't get anywhere. It doesn't really get anything done. And, it's easy to say that, all right, well, I'm going to avoid it now, but then you get right back into it. We unfortunately did go through a circumstance a couple of months ago where it was kind of like an aha moment of, yeah, you really don't need to be on social media that much. I mean, you need to be there.
It's such an echo chamber.
It really is. Yeah. And you really need to be outside of that, outside those walls. You need to be able to build relationships. And frankly, in a lot of ways, you got to build relationships around things that have nothing to do with politics. Because
that's the thing.
Yeah, most people don't want to do that. And so what we really try to do down here is, again, this is a source of what Humanity Forward is all about. We focus on service to the community. What can we do to really help? One of the things that we're huge advocates for, things like community gardens, compost.
We're getting a new garden.
So that type of stuff is a huge unifier, and that would bring everybody together. And again, it doesn't have anything to do with politics. It could bring in all different stripes. And when you think about the issues like ranked choice voting and open primaries, there's no partisanship there. That's strictly, that's everybody.
It's democracy, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, this also, it speaks to this kind of, we've experienced this erosion of community, and it was happening, prior to social media. It's happening prior to the internet. This is just, it's something that, I'm an atheist, but at the same time, I appreciate that like churches actually were these communal spaces where people who, Republicans and Democrats and everyone else could like go into one spot, and they could all see each other and see each other as human beings and members of the same community, and could speak to each other. And those spaces are important. And so as we've shifted away from both from like the church as this kind of space, and also this kind of like polarization of the church, politicization of it too, where it's really kind of like so much more conservative oriented than liberal oriented. We haven't like created these other spaces where people can get together as they're in their community to see each other's community. So like when you do have these things like, community gardens and community volunteering and these kinds of things, then that creates this needed space that is separate from social media that really helps create, these bubbles, and these spaces in the real world actually help tear those bubbles down and actually are able to get people to see each other. Like we're leading to a civil war kind of, place, as long as we're in these like digital worlds and we see each other as the enemy. And it's just so much easier to see each other as human beings, fellow human beings that just disagree about things, if you're actually seeing each other face to face and interacting together and trying to improve your community together.
Yeah, it's funny. I was just talking about that with my friend today, how people feel so at liberty to say things when they're not saying it to your face. It's so much easier to be meaner than you would and be less reasonable and just be stuck in your own little way when you're not face to face with somebody and having that like actually listen. And I think social media has given us more interactions, but they're infinitely less meaningful. And I think that to me is sad. And I think about kids that are my son's generation. And I think it's sad that they're growing up with less depth in their relationships than, because all they do is text and slang and whatever they're talking and whatever. And they're not really I think it's going to be I don't think they're going to have the same level of relationships
yes. Interpersonal communication is definitely way down. Kind of like, dating is always done online. like the whole concept of like interaction in person is just so not what it used to be.
If anything ever happens to my husband, I'm just being alone in the mountains, man.
Yeah,
I'm
right.
not doing any of that.
But
I have my dog.
But the one thing that I think we can all agree on is, yeah, social media can, and just the ability to connect with technology can be our greatest asset, but also our greatest detriment at the same time. There's no manual that tells you exactly how to use it or to use it properly. But the one thing that I have noticed is you do have a lot of people in the political sphere that are paid a lot of money to start trouble. There is no question that there are people, especially on Capitol Hill, that work in the consultant class, as I like to say, that not only put out incendiary tweets about, it could be the other party, it could be Trump, it could be whatever, the world's coming to an end. And then the next thing you know, it's got 50,000 likes. And why is that? Because there's an algorithm factor. And then there's this colluding factor of everybody always boosting each other's stuff. And then the interaction just becomes extremely toxic. And yes, I know the dog is cute.
I can't even. I just can't even. He's so cute. That thing in his mouth. Titus.
One of the things that I did want to wind down the conversation on is the fact that despite all of it and despite all of the heat that Andrew has taken, his disposition about everything is what I wish everybody's was.
Yeah.
He's a guy who really doesn't want to be in politics, but he feels he needs to be. And that is a mark of somebody who I want to be involved in.
And it's funny because he gets I wouldn't even say hate, but the people that make the comments, and even in any comments we've had, they'll pick out one position, one thing he said, whatever it is. And I keep trying to reiterate this, and people, I cannot say this enough. Andrew is a person of science, reason, and compassion. He is somebody that would surround himself with really smart people and listen to their advice. He's not an authoritarian. So just because you don't agree with somebody, and that's what keeps us from electing people that would use good judgment and sound reason. It's so frustrating that we focus all on one thing. Andrew Yang is not an authoritarian. He's not going to get elected to any position and just sort of say, this is how it's going to be, people, whether you like it or not. That's just not his thing. So it's bizarre to me that people will fixate. And I really do believe that people decide that they just don't like somebody. And then they work backwards from their conclusion and spend all their time picking out the negative things. And then you'll keep getting those negative sound bites. And it's just ridiculous.
That is a much bigger problem on the left than it is.
Yes.
One thing you can give the right credit for, they are much more policy oriented, and I respect the hell out of them for that. The left has much more of a tendency to, as much as they claim that they care about policy, they always revert back
feelings.
to the emotional reaction.
They're unreasonable. They're unreasonable.
Think about the fact that maybe, just maybe, as corrupt and as crooked as the system is, if Bernie just had slightly more appeal, he would have been president. But constantly, when I ask somebody about Bernie, say, I don't like him.
I don't like him.
But
he's a grumpy man.
Yeah,
he's a grumpy man. He's an old white man.
I don't like him. I just don't like him. And I'm just thinking, do you like his policy? I just don't like him.
I don't like him. And this is the thing. I've said it a million times. I don't know that I would like Bernie. He seems very curmudgeonly and kind of grumpy to me. I don't know that I'd like Bernie. I probably would rather hang out with W if I didn't think he was a criminal. But it's like people need to not be voting for that.
You're talking to somebody who lives in New Orleans, by the way. So there you go. Yeah.
Well, you're in Nolens?
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
So again, we really put an emphasis too much on personality.
God.
The Democrats fall in love and the Republicans fall in line. And that in many ways is why they win, even as a more minority party. And
I still don't understand why anybody wouldn't like Andrew, though. He's so unbelievably likable.
John, I don't disagree. I am sure that on the margins that made
it's possible. I mean, look, I'm loath to ever play the anti-Semite card.
No, but that definitely played a role in certain places. And that's also something that we know that the Hillary campaign and
they
others,
did.
They were playing into that. There's no
did.
question that they did. But I saw enough of it to recognize that
let's just say this. It's never going to be a selling point.
Yeah. But of course, the personality has a lot to do with it.
He is a grumpy seeming old man.
Well, but again, I think the more we emphasize the policies and yes, the using the word quality of the candidate, but that does matter. You know,
well,
the
I think charisma
likability.
matters. Well, likability. Bernie has like a certain charisma to him, but it isn't necessarily touchy-feely friendly to a lot of people, especially a lot of the older women.
Yeah.
The like, I'm not going to mention names, but the person who I shall not name, just whatever. Like there's certain sect.
And another thing too is again, we need to focus on the systems themselves and not just the people and the policies. And you know, to like, I wonder if we had ranked choice voting, you know, already it was everywhere, and you know, so then the primaries were decided, and you know, it was you know, Bernie versus Hillary and everyone else, and you know, how many more states, how much better would have Bernie won in that situation? Like it's more difficult to see how he would have done. But on the other hand, too, we know, at least, you know, I'm virtually 100% certain that Trump would never have won a Republican primary with ranked choice voting. It like most likely would have been like Ted Cruz or Rubio. And then
but
it would have been
that's not good.
Right, but then you could say, would they have beaten Hillary in that situation? And you know, so Trump wouldn't have been president either way.
That's a good point. I always said the only person on the Republican side who I would have voted. No. The only person that was running on the Republican ticket that would have forced me to vote for Hillary Clinton was Ted Cruz.
Yeah.
That it's so funny that you say that because it's true. Like, could he have? I don't know. He is the only person that I find that repugnant.
I think that the party really tried their best to, you know, try to make Marco Rubio and even John Kasich happen. But, you know, at the time,
talk about lack of charisma.
Yeah, it was just a perfect it was a perfect storm, and the message that he was conveying was but let's be honest, as much of a false prophet as Trump is, there was a lot of things that he was saying that a lot of people on both sides agree with. He doesn't care. He was just trying to win.
Those things, mind you.
He was just trying to win. And
no, he was running a populist campaign in a populist time. And so Bernie was running as the populist and Trump was running as the populist. And, you know, it would have been really interesting to see how they would have faced each other in the presidential general, especially, again, if we had a ranked choice general. And so, you know, like you said, that you wouldn't have voted for Hillary. Like I wouldn't have put her, I definitely wouldn't have ranked her one, but I would have ranked her in the same way that I think people just learned in the New York election, where you want to rank at least the very bottom of the person that's like second worst. Let's say that it's definitely going to be one of the top two, because you want to make sure that you have a voice in the final round. And so I think that, you know, even New York going forward, people know that the more people they rank, the better, especially if they include someone who is not their absolute most disliked candidate. Exclude that person, rank everyone else that you can, and the outcomes will be better. And so even with ranked choice, over time, it encourages people to continue to rank more and more and more people to like make sure that they rank as many as they can.
I just went down such a rabbit hole. So I have this idea. Somebody should go back and look through in our history, each presidential campaign, and go back and say, what would have happened had there been ranked choice voting, and go back to the very beginning and almost follow that second, like a Back to the Future timeline, because each election would have been completely different. And what would have happened if the general population had been in control better, had more, if the election more was a reflection.
We've had some very interesting
For
elections.
anybody interested, go back and look in history.
Gore would have been president. Like Gore would have been president. I don't know how many, if it would have been, you know, 2 terms, but he definitely would have been president. And then so then would we have gone to and started like the, you know, Iraq war and stuff? Like probably not.
Like one thing that I can say with absolute certainty, if Gore had been elected president, and let's face it, he was elected president. I get really tired.
It's true.
I get really sick and tired.
W is actually an illegitimate president.
I get really sick and tired of people saying that Trump was an illegitimate president.
No.
Like, you actually did have an illegitimate president, and you've tried to
rehabilitate. Oh yes, now isn't he fun?
Yeah. For anybody who lives in the bayou, I highly doubt that anybody's rehabilitating W. But at the end of the day, he should have been president, and if he was, I think we would have been way ahead when it comes to what we're doing with the climate.
Oh yeah. I do too.
That is
for sure.
Definitely something that Gore was adamant about. He had no personality, and that was ultimately what doomed him. But as far as his ability to really focus on what we really need to be fighting for, you know,
that's true. The climate thing would have been, we'd be in an infinitely different.
We could have had a forward thinking
I do think that.
environmental president versus
Yeah.
a guy who claims that he talks to God every morning.
Oh,
You know, there's
so
there
unfortunate.
is the difference between those two was more stark than I think people were willing to admit. And so today it more or less just comes full circle. We're in a desperate situation. We really do want to make these changes. And I think the only way we're going to do it is if we keep having these conversations.
Yeah.
Okay, maybe it's not sexy. Maybe it's not, you know,
Oh, it's
clickbaity.
really not sexy. And we've got some other unsexy things coming up on the show that we'll talk about.
Yeah, but it is something where I think it's very important that, you know, we do continue to do this. And we're very appreciative, Scott. I mean,
Yeah.
I know there's some MMT people that you're not crazy about. But
We're
at the
not
end
going to
of the
go
day-
there because we are all ultimately wanting people to be doing well.
But
That's
at the-
really
yeah.
what
but
we're
at the
trying
end
to
of
do.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, if somebody like you, who is the foremost knowledgeable person about UBI, yes, we're paying our respects, and the fact that you're saying that MMT and UBI can coexist, I hope this podcast gets out there to as many people as
Yeah,
possible.
people forward.
'Cause this really needs to be discussed.
Yeah.
And this is something that when it comes to talking about the Forward Party can really become a major topic of conversation. How can MMTers and UBIers coexist? I think we
Yeah.
can do it. Scott, this floor is yours. Anything you want
Yeah,
to plug,
what are you promoting?
anything you want to promote, go for it.
You know, it's funny, we didn't really get to get into too many details as far as like UBI and MMT goes. So, you know, I encourage people to get into that, like, you know, read my article or listen to the article
Post that.
and just give it some thought. You know, I want people to consider that making sure that there's a solid foundation underneath everybody is
Uh-oh.
not just like this, you know, seen as like some kind of welfare fix or you know, it's some people think of it as like just money and it's not going to fix anything. Like I'm really interested in structural solutions, and I've always seen UBI since I got into it as being that rare policy that isn't just a policy; it's actually a structural change. Like when like we're seeing this kind of peak at how things could be right now with, you know, labor having so much bargaining power. And like that's a structural thing. What does that change when like labor has this bargaining power where they can withhold their labor to a greater degree until their demands are met? Like that is huge. And you know, when people have money, it's not just like this. It's not just money. It's what you use it on. And so you can use it on as effectively democracy vouchers. You know, you can use it to donate to candidates, to grassroots candidates. You can use it in a way that enables unpaid work, that enables you to volunteer for campaigns to get more involved. You can use it as like these kind of journalism vouchers where you can actually support local journalism to a degree that you wouldn't be able to otherwise. Like that's one of the problems is as wages have stagnated, it allowed advertising to eat into all these subscription-based news models because people had less disposable income to spend. So that there's so many things that UBI enables beyond what people, I think, superficially think it is. And it's not only just about money, it's about the sense of power and security, freedom of choice to make so many more actual choices to a degree that people just can't make now. And when you see this as like this bigger picture kind of thing, that it makes so much more sense as this foundation that we actually need to build everything else on. You know, it's not to say UBI is the only thing that we need. It's just really important as this kind of like fundamental foundational structure underneath everything because of what the wide encompassing effects that it has on entire systems and on our social system. This sense of, you know, people being more secure can change the way that people react to social media, can change the, you know, the temperature of the partisanship. You know, so much of this has been driven from this decades of stagnation and people feeling worse and worse off. And, you know, again, this rising strongman comes to power and you say, well, if this isn't working for me, I'm going to vote for someone who says that they're going to do that. Like you said, he was saying the right things. People felt that maybe this guy would be different. So it's just really important that the government actually works for people. And I think UBI is a way of making and really actively demonstrating that in a way that we just haven't been. And if we can do that, and we can also focus on these other important reforms like ranked choice voting and open primaries and everything else, then we can actually make a government that works. And our future is going to be so much brighter because we actually do things like the Green New Deal. We'd actually tackle climate change. We can actually do these things that we absolutely have to do to prevent this dystopia that we're currently living in, and it's just getting worse. And it's up to us to make it better.
I think you said it very well. And again, and Henry Gustav, friend of the show, he's an MMTer, and he asks, what structural change does UBI give? I think it's a question right now.
It's a concrete. I think what we're talking about, it's a concrete solution to a real problem. It's a concrete physical solution. Money in people's hands.
Yeah, and again, we support the federal jobs guarantee.
Yes, I do.
I think that the thing that isn't really getting talked about enough right now is that there are, and especially in lieu of the pandemic, there are so many people that are suffering right now and that are in debt.
Yeah.
And they are desperate. And if you are able to put cash relief in people's hands, we saw what happened with the stimulus checks. This is what it is.
It's not complicated.
UBI doesn't have to be forever, but there could be circumstances where it's called upon the government to do it. Where
we're in that time.
We are absolutely in that time.
That would be now.
So if you just want to throw your thoughts in, Scott, about that.
I just want to say too that it is really important to look at what we just experienced in 2020 and even right now. This pandemic, I think, clearly demonstrated the importance of basic income. And if we can rewind it and imagine how different things would have been if we already had UBI in place when the pandemic hit, it seems to me that it's obvious how much better things would have gone. Like, we would not have seen these ginormous lines for food banks that we saw because people could go into the stores. There was no problems with it. It wasn't like any supply chain issues that prevented food from going into stores. It was there. But instead, people need to go to food banks because they didn't have the money. And when it came to, people say going to work when they were sick, like they felt they needed to do that. People, didn't get vaccinated because they felt that they were worried what would happen if it makes them sick and they lose income from work, and that means they were not able to pay their bills. That's an effect. We saw what happened as far as housing goes. Like, we, instead of making sure everyone could pay their rent, we said, okay, you can't evict everybody. And then that just kicked the can down the road. And at some point, we had to allow people to be evicted again. And sure enough, so many people got evicted, even though they had this program in place that they said, oh, well, we'll make sure that we have this nice targeted program that assists people with their rent and requires this, partnership between the landlord and the leasee. And what happened there? Like, a very small percentage of that money got out. So it's obvious that things would have been better. And then if you rewind it and think about the job guarantee, like, what would that have looked like? We would have been in a pandemic situation where with social distancing, especially during the shutdown, and we would have said that you need to go to work in order to get income. Like, even Stephanie Kelton, as soon as it started, she was saying, we need monthly stimulus checks. Like, she was out there in front saying stimulus checks, stimulus checks, stimulus checks. And that even made me think differently about her, because I did not think that she would have done that. I thought, from this ideological perspective and this misunderstanding of her, that she would, if this happened, she'd be pushing the job guarantee. And I was totally wrong. I was wrong about that. And I was like, wow, like, what else am I wrong about when it comes to Stephanie Kelton and her thinking? And, that encouraged me to read a book. And so, like, even Stephanie Kelton understood that people needed cash. And so MMT people, I feel, should understand how important it is that make sure that people always have enough income, that they don't have to jump through hoops to get it, that there's no way to people to fall through the holes as they did with, like, the rental assistance program, that even with the stimulus checks, we created holes for people to fall through because we judged people's need based on their incomes 2 years ago. So by not universalizing it, people still fell through the holes of this system that we created, even when we tried to do it. And, like, to our credit, we created the Pandemic Unemployment Assistance Program in order to help people who were in, gig labor and contractors in a way that we were entirely ignoring before the pandemic happened. And it's just interesting how when it happened, they're like, oh, yeah, there's this other group that are unemployed. We should probably help them too. And so it just would have worked out so much better if we would have made sure that everyone had at least some amount of money to get by. There would have been less hunger. There would have been fewer food lines. There would have been fewer evictions. And I think that coronavirus would have been impacted differently too. I think that just a lot of infections even came from people feeling that they had to go to work when they were sick. We already know that happens with the flu itself, that there's people who go to work when they're sick because they feel they have to. I just think everything would have been different if we had a UBI, and it's just clear how much better things would have gone.
Scott, I really want you to tackle this because this is a talking point that has been hit over the head a million times. This idea that Yang is really just a secret libertarian. He wants to remove all social safety nets.
And this is his way to cover that up. And we just had him on the other day, guys. Check out the interview. He supports Medicare for all. So that's not true what you're saying.
So why is this talking point still to this day being brought up?
Like he'll give you UBI, but take away.
Yeah, but he wants to take away, all of Social Security and, anything, unemployment. To me, I just think that you get to the point where you're trying to find a reason not to agree with the issue. So what do you take away from, because it's not like this person is just saying that. We hear this constantly.
Yeah. So I think this comes down to disinformation, and disinformation becomes misinformation. So people who are dishonest actors put out information they know to be false in order to help something that they're doing. And I think in this instance, that this was a result of a primary without a ranked choice system, because obviously, I feel that Bernie Sanders supporters and Andrew Yang supporters, there should have been huge overlap between them.
Yeah.
And if there had been a ranked choice voting system, then there would have been that coalition built. And I think that part of the problem with this misinformation stems from the fact that it started from Bernie Sanders supporters saying, okay, let's actually spread lies about Yang. And then, of course, there's other Bernie Sanders supporters who didn't know they were lies, that they just amplified them and spread them. But it came out of this like false division between groups that should have been a team. And so to this day, people are misinformed about that it is absolutely not true that Andrew wanted to eliminate existing programs. The entire purpose of what his design was, as far as like, it was only 4 programs too. It was TANF, SNAP, SSI, and WIC that didn't actually combine with everything else. And it was just a choice between the two. And the choice was given because Andrew understands how welfare cliffs work. So he didn't want people to fall off these welfare cliffs as far as like, if they're receiving more in the existing programs, that then they have to choose, or they don't even get to choose. They just get kicked down to, the basic income. That's not what he wanted. He said he wanted to make sure that if people were getting, say, $1,500 right now, and they weren't lower down to 1,000 from it counting. They got to choose. And the other important part of this too is there was no eliminating of those programs. They were still meant to be there, and it was understanding that they're temporary. So all of these programs that exist, that the people are going to stop getting them. And so at that point, they will fall to the UBI because that's always there. What it's not, TANF is a temporary program. Of course, it's in the name. It's temporary assistance for needy families. Right. You only get it for a certain amount of time. SNAP is also very temporary. If you're a single adult with no children, you get to claim it for 3 months every 3 years. And that's the maximum you get to claim it for. Right. So that doesn't reach everybody. And, SSI, this is a disability program that I think, should combine. Disability itself should combine with UBI, but there is so much waiting. Even to the average wait time for SSI is 2 years, and over 10,000 people a year die even while they're waiting for SSI to be actually qualified for it. And we need to make sure that there's always that something there. And Andrew Yang wanted that to always be there. He's not about tearing down these other things.
How do people make him out to be so sinister? It's like, guys, he's just this nice guy trying to help people. I assure you, like, it's just so crazy to me.
And then when you think about the whole concept of UBI and, you know, not having it to be means tested, it's simple. You just make sure that people over a certain income threshold, they have to pay
it back.
Exactly. I mean,
not complicated.
And then if you don't want to pay it back, you just don't accept the UBI. There is that as well. So again, this stuff it's not as complicated as people think it is. We just have the one thing that progressives, I would like to think, agree with libertarians on, is that we have a completely over-bloated bureaucracy. We have a huge problem with that in this country.
It makes people money.
And it does. Yeah. It makes people money that don't have to really do anything. And so when you have a sweetheart job, they are going to fight harder to keep that job than somebody who is resourceful and can always find something else. So that, to me, also speaks to this whole idea of, well, you're going to take this away. And
nope,
that is the whole like scare tactic. But again, that's politics. So much of it is based on fear, and not enough of it is based on inspiration. And I think that in itself is really what we're trying to do here. And I think that's what you're trying to do. It means a lot, Scott, that you're trying to build the bridge, to really build the bridge. Yeah. Is there a link that we can post for the article for everybody to read?
You can just go to scottsantens.com and you'll find it, right there on the front page is one of my recent articles.
Hey guys, you should check it out.
Absolutely. We highly recommend it. We're very appreciative that you came on.
Thank you so much. And I'm sorry we kept you, but we're just like, chatting.
No, happy to chat. Yeah. And Titus
much.
has taken a nap over here, but he says hello.
Well,
he looks like he has a very rough life. I'm sure he's exhausted from his very rough working life.
ScottSantens.com, Humanity Forward, the Forward Party. Check it out, guys. Scott, thank you so much.
Thanks,
we'll definitely
Scott.
see you again soon.
Thank you. Take care.
Take care, brother.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Always a pleasure, of course, and a great conversation all around. Yes.
I always say that when we have guests.
As we have said many a times, and we will say it again, the best group of people that we have done. Yes, he's an adorable little munchkin. And what we have learned over the course of our involvement in politics, there is no more committed, focused group of politicos than the Yang Gang. They're the best. I say that and again,
it's true.
There are a lot of people in the political sphere who do a good job. Let's not misunderstand.
But the difference is it's basically a group of people that are acting based out of reason.
And they're very
focused, that's just so crazy.
And they're very, very focused on policy.
Yeah.
Like that's what we're about.
And trying to fix problems.
Yeah.
Like really kind of.
They're really not into the drama stuff.
No.
That's also, a really big appeal. And I think you get the cues from the people that are in, influential positions like Scott, like Andrew, like Zach Rauman. They don't get mired down in this crap. They recognize
we try to not get mired down in this crap.
And so we don't have news and amusement.
But what I did do, because I thought this would be kind of interesting from our perspective.
So John,
I pulled up today's news, and I thought that if there was anything that tickled your fancy, and I also have.
I think we could
Reuters.
talk about. No, I think we should just talk about the elections. I think that's really the focus of the topic, if you will, because obviously the elections are very important. So John, as of right now, the last night when 100% of the precincts were reporting, Sheila had won by 31 votes. Dale Holness was in second place. And lo and behold, within the course of not even 24 hours, it went from Sheila being up by 31 votes and winning to Dale Holness is now up by 9 votes.
And there were these uncounted ballots, even though 100% was reporting.
So what is the most likely scenario? Is Dale going to win? I think, well, listen, it's an automatic, by law, it is an automatic manual recount if it's less than 100 votes. So that's what's going to happen. What I also think is going to happen is that this is probably going to get dragged out for a while. Why? Because if there's one thing we know about Sheila and one thing we know about Dale, They are, and this was brought to my attention at the watch party the other night.
Yeah.
There was a real, like, if there was a rivalry in this election, it was
It's them.
Sheila and Dale.
Yeah.
That was the rivalry. So they were having fights at the polls and things like that.
And then there was the spoiler.
Yeah. So then, so essentially what's going to happen now, most likely, is that it is going to go through the courts. That's what's going to happen. There's going to be ballots that are going to be checked. Who knows? Maybe there might be ballots that get thrown out because
they were harvested.
Yeah, you never know.
There's this thing called ballot harvesting, people.
So what's going to end up happening?
It happens here.
Yeah. So what's going to end up happening is, and this was privy to me last night when I was there, and I have offered to help out. We will offer to help out if necessary. There may be certain ballot signatures that need to be obtained for verification on certain ballots that were sent out. So there's extra work that's going to go into that. When it's this razor thin, and I mean razor thin, like you could cut it with a knife, it almost makes you wonder, well, could I have done more? What am I ultimately going to employ here? John, we agree. This is really a matter of... And
I like him.
And I like him too.
Very much.
But here's the problem that I have. And this stems more, not necessarily from him running, because you can run. There is nobody who can tell you that you should or shouldn't run.
That's true.
What I'm looking at is the fact that the left, the political left, is horrific at strategy. Horrific. And it isn't necessarily just the candidate.
No.
Because we saw what happened to India Walton, and that is the greatest freaking tragedy of last night. And that is not necessarily about strategy. That's about the Democratic machine deciding their fate. The vote blue, no matter who, is now dead.
Oh yeah, you'll never get to say that again.
Never be able to bring it up again, because not only did this guy not drop out, he ran a write-in campaign.
Oh my God!
And he got millions of dollars behind it just because he couldn't take a loss.
And do you know what he did? Is they sent out these stamps. Did you see this? This is how he did it, because not only when you do a write-in, you have to check the box, but you also have to put the name. Yeah. But apparently a stamp works. So they spent thousands of dollars and sent everybody stamps with his name and said, just stamp this.
Julie, don't be a hater. Just check out the podcast. We're appreciative that you're here. The conversation was rich. And the Mr. UBI is supporting MMT. So let's give everybody a chance and give them the benefit of the doubt.
We're just trying to make things better for people. We don't have to agree on how.
Scott even said on the podcast this evening that he wasn't a fan of Stephanie Kelton until he heard her really listen to her. He listened to her thoughts on cash relief, and then he read her book, and he actually agrees with a lot of it. So give people the opportunity to come into the fold. That's the way we see it.
These are all people that are wanting good things.
Yeah.
It is.
And so last night, I think, listen.
It's true. They did a good job. They did a good job at keeping her down.
They did a great job of not putting any attention on this race down here, because corporate media is going to do what they're going to do. They really put all of their eggs in the Virginia gubernatorial basket. And it was a huge mistake. And I'm often wondering why they did
Democrats. That. I almost think it's almost self-sabotage at this point.
Maybe so. Well,
I do.
That goes without
at this
saying.
Point, I think it's just on purpose. They just want to keep it the way it is.
But the issue I really
they can't possibly be that stupid.
But no, they are. They're but it's deliberate. That's
what I never understand. Is it worse to be stupid or disingenuous?
No, because
I never know what's worse.
Well, they say you can't.
I mean, to me, I'd rather be
that. You can be naive and learn from that. But it gets to the point where you know it's being done.
I think I'd rather be stupid than disingenuous.
Well, the problem that we have with the particular race with with Sheila McCormick and Amari Hardy is this. They were both solid candidates, but one of them had already run for the seat twice. Name recognition was high, self-funding the campaign, and
had money.
Somebody who, again, when you have name recognition and you have money, and that's what I presented to
and is progressive.
That is what I presented to the Progressive Caucus. That's what I said to them. I said, look, I understand emotionally you're more driven to support Amari.
I still don't understand that either, but whatever.
But if you're trying to win, are you trying to win?
No.
One candidate, and again, we like both.
I do. I really do like Amari.
One candidate had $100,000. The other candidate had $2 million.
It's a big difference.
That's a huge, no, that's not a difference. It's a colossal difference.
Yeah.
And if you want to compete and you want to win, you have to break through not just the fact that you need to have the ads out there. You have to break through the fact that Broward County is one of the most entrenched, corrupt, counties,
We'd be filthy.
political power brokering counties in the country.
Look at ballot harvesting.
We had people who came down for races in 2020 when it wasn't just Jen running, it was the supervisor of elections, it was the sheriff's race, it was the state attorney's race.
It was ugly.
And we had people coming into our county from all over the country who were saying, oh, you Broward people, you guys, whew, I thought I let me tell you, I've been all over the country. You guys are something
like
something
election
different.
people and consultants and people that do travel different elections that are here. They're always like, oh, Broward.
So if a guy's able to say, I've been to Texas, California, New York, you guys in Florida, oh boy, you guys are bad.
Not just Florida, Broward.
It's like, oh, you guys are bad. So here we have a situation where if the Progressive Caucus was dead set on making sure that we got one of ours in, they would have done everything in their power to support Sheila because of the viability factor.
But the problem is like we were just saying with Scott, is that for them it's about feelings and emotion, and it's about they want to support who they like, and I appreciate that. I appreciate that. But if there's two people that are standing for the same policy and one has the better chance of getting in, it really shouldn't be who you like.
And the other thing that people need to,
the
other thing that people need to realize is that you have to, and this is again much worse on the left than on the right, but people take everything very personally. And they would think that, oh, well, you don't like that guy. Well, I don't like you anymore. It's like, no, it's not like that.
Can't.
You're either trying to get things done or you're just continuing to circle the drain.
We have some good things coming up.
We do. So I don't want to stay on the hamster wheel. I want to get off it and I want to get things done. I hope Sheila pulls it out. I still think she's got a shot. I think that there is going to be a really drawn out
it's going to take a while. There's going to be a process, but I also would like to say wholeheartedly, screw you to Byron Brown and everybody in the Buffalo Democratic Party.
And it's not just them. It's also Governor Hochul. It's also the New York State Democratic Party.
You people do not and cannot claim that you care about living in an actual democracy.
And let's be honest. Let's be really honest. Do you honestly think that Mr. New York City himself, Chuck Schumer, endorsing India Walton with about a week to go in the election was going to make or break whether or not she won? Were they actually putting money into the race?
No.
Were they trying to make sure? Were they?
Do you think they wanted her to win? Oh my God, people they are so happy now.
As soon as Byron Brown decided that he was going to do what he was going to do, the Democratic Party had to universally say, no, she won the primary and we're moving on.
But the Democrats are not very democratic. They're not here either, so no surprise.
City commissioner, county commissioner, a person that we are, listen, we're cordial with him, Steve Geller. We don't agree with him a lot politically, and he doesn't like progressives, but you know what? I was in the room with him the night that Andrew Gillum won the primary. He was a huge supporter of Gwen Graham, not surprising.
No.
But he, to a man, said to everybody in that room, all right, we're getting behind Andrew. And that's it. And that was it. That was it. It was over in that moment.
Every once in a while, we could give props to Geller.
That's right.
I mean, look, I'm not a huge fan, but every once in a while, we'll give him another prop.
And he is good to the unions.
He is good to the unions. The unions like him. He's good. He's good.
And they even say, "Oh, he shows up. He puts in the work," and I respect the hell out of him for doing that. So when you have a situation,
get this in writing. We were just sitting here publicly saying really positive things about Commissioner Geller,
hey, Geller,
or anybody really like in local politics.
We are never going to ask Steve Geller for an endorsement because we know how close he is with Debbie. So that is not happening. But you give credit where credit's due.
But his wife kind of likes me.
She's a doll. And so if there really was this consensus of, well, look, India's the Democratic nominee and we need to get behind her, then it would have happened immediately. It wasn't just, I'm going to run as a write-in. He was trying to sabotage the circumstance from the beginning.
Well, think about what would have happened if people got behind Nina Turner in the way that they claim to be for the same policies.
Correct.
If they actually did that. Speaking of Nina.
You know who would get behind Nina? Andrew Yang.
Oh, yeah. for sure.
And they would put boots on the ground.
Oh, for sure.
They would do that type of thing. They wouldn't question whether or not to do that. And I'm going to listen.
And they wouldn't sit there with a purity test on every little single thing. That's the beauty of Yang.
And listen, Nick Brana, I'm going to call you out because listen, I understand that you guys with the People Party endorsed Nina, but you didn't put any effort in. You didn't. And if you did, we would have seen tons of people on the ground in Cleveland.
And if this announcement comes,
how do we know? Because we were in Cleveland.
We were.
And we didn't see you guys there.
But I will say that there is another opportunity, as that was a special election, and the election for that seat, which is Ohio's 10th or 11th.
Ohio's 11th district, I'm pretty sure.
Okay.
Now you're going to make me look this up.
I know, I'm sorry. But is up for election in May. The primary is in May. And we have a feeling, though we have not confirmation, we have a feeling that Nina is going to go for it again.
Have you talked to her yet?
All
right, so she can't say too much.
But here's the thing.
I think Nina is just trying to figure out if it makes sense. That's it.
She's very, very smart.
She is.
So if there's not a clear path, if
Ohio
she hasn't,
yes, I was right.
Okay. If there's not a clear path and she doesn't see strategically where they could make it be different, then she's not going to bang her head against the wall. She'll do something else. She'll find another method. So if she does it, it's because she has regrouped, figured out what needs to happen and where and that happens. John, I can tell you personally.
John, what you have to remember is, look, if Jen
she did file.
Jen could file against Debbie again, but not ultimately run until you have to pay the fee.
Right.
So you can file. Anybody can file.
So that's just getting it
run.
Right. Like if you go and look, sometimes for a race, there'll be a ton of people that filed, but if they don't pay the fee or they don't qualify, then they won't be on the ballot.
You should just file against Debbie just to make her
crap her sake.
Just to make her crap her britches.
I don't think she'd do anything.
She probably would. She's probably already done enough.
My son goes to school in Weston now. I don't necessarily to be fanning flames.
No, but nevertheless,
we have good things coming up.
Yeah,
guys.
we do.
We really do.
And a couple of things that I do want to touch on before we finish. No surprise. And I was privately saying, I actually did think Youngkin was going to win. I did think that Terry McAuliffe was going to lose. And you know what? In a way, he had to lose. Because at some point...
Is this Virginia?
Yeah. At some point, you have to... This is not the same situation as was like in 2010. There are way too many people awake now. There are way too many people who see the writing on the wall, who are looking right at them and saying, we're not playing this game anymore. You're either going to deliver or you're not. And if the other side is going to deliver a bag of crap, well, guess what? Your crap may not be as big, but it's still crap. And so people don't want that anymore. And to his credit, and I was right there, few feet from the stage, I was at the rally with Bernie Sanders for Governor Murphy. And Jersey's my home. And at the end of the day, Phil Murphy, former head of Goldman Sachs, that guy. He's done a lot of good stuff for New Jersey. You got to tip your hat where it's due. He the minimum wage in New Jersey, I think now is like 13 an hour or something like that. I mean, look, should be 15. It should be much higher than that. But the reality is he's at least moving the needle in the right direction. He legalized cannabis. He has a real robust plan for the environment that they've really been doing a great job on. He is considered by Bernie Sanders to be the most progressive governor in the United States. That's why Bernie was there.
It's a low bar, mind you.
Maybe so. But Bernie was there to support him, and the kids love him, and they really came out for him. Bernie did not go to Virginia to support Terry McAuliffe. Not that he probably would want him there anyway. But to me, that spoke a lot about where Bernie's head was at. And also, there were a lot of great down ballot victories. Apparently, the DSA did exceptionally well.
Good.
About 70% of their victories. And something I'm
certainly not here.
Something I'm going to announce now that you didn't know about. Former slate mate Nick Robondo out in Ohio.
Ohio?
He's a city council member.
Oh, yay, Nick. He was great.
Great guy. Very nice.
Really nice guy. He was a BNC slate mate. He was one of those rarities. It's kind of like there weren't a lot of them in BNC that were in red districts because they generally didn't pick people in red districts. So Nick was kind of a unicorn that way. He was just a nice guy. He actually had his Democratic Party behind him, unlike most of the BNC people where our Democratic parties hate us.
And John, thank you, brother. Richie Floyd is now the mayor or city council member. of St. Petersburg.
I'm trying to think.
Richie, we had on the podcast.
Yeah, no, I know what you're saying. Why is he saying wrong, Jen?
Oh, I think he was just talking about, or maybe he was alluding to whether we mentioned all of the big victories last night. I was going to get to Richie, John, but thank you. Yes, Richie Floyd, the biggest, what I hope is the second biggest victory in Florida. But if it ultimately ends up being the biggest victory, we'll definitely take it.
Oh, that's right.
And
He was great.
Yeah, he was. And we're very
I've
happy
talked to
that
so
he
many
won.
people. They kind of, I hate to say it, guys, but sometimes they kind of blend together.
It can happen. We've spoken with a lot, but we're very appreciative. And
Yeah. Oh, for
anything
sure.
that
Look,
we
I'll
can do to help.
yeah, for sure. But
100%.
I am not, you know,
And and again, while it may not have been the races that everybody was focused on, the non-corporate candidates, once again, did very, very well. And a lot of them are doing it the right way. They're seeking offices that are not getting the attention of the big bad wolf, if you will. Corporate special interests and the corporate media are not shining a light on these smaller races.
We're going to infiltrate.
It's the only way to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And so overall last night, again, we're hoping that Sheila McCormick wins her race. And we are very upset about what happened to India Walton.
Yeah.
When you take that out of the equation. Oh, I didn't realize that. I don't think that I said no DSA victories in Florida. If we did, it may have been just a slip of tongue. But you know,
that's right. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I'm
he
sorry.
was
That's
supported
what it was.
by the Progressive Caucus, who's supported by DSA.
And I actually was thinking
Sunrise
like down
too, I
here.
think.
I was
Yeah.
actually thinking like
Yeah.
around our neck of the woods was what I was kind of thinking.
We were hoping for Michael Hepburn. Unfortunately, he didn't win. Look, you're not going to win them all, but at the end of the day, the needle is moving. It is. It's not moving as fast as we'd like it to move, but it's always refreshing to know that overall, for progressives in particular, the night was actually really good. What happened to India Walton was not going to score a show.
But
Was a tragedy. It
Yes.
was an absolute tragedy. And in a way, she's going to be a political martyr as a result of it. So that was the recap, if you will. A mixed bag of sorts. I think it was good that Phil Murphy won re-election, and I'm certainly appreciative that Bernie is still out there at 80 freaking years old doing what he's doing. And he's still got the energy, baby. That's why some people are going to try to drag him into another run if they think they're doing that. I don't know.
I just realized that sadly I have the League of Women Voters Gala fundraiser is on Sunday from 12 to 3. So I'm going to have to miss it because we have interviews. But what's so sad about this is that this fundraiser, this gala was supposed to be last year, but was postponed due to COVID. And it represented the 100-year of suffrage in this country. And there's a special speaker, and it's really kind of cool. Like this history, and all of the League ladies, they dress up like suffragettes.
You said that it's 12 to 3? Okay. So then I think what we could do is you could probably get there for the last hour if I think it would be good.
It doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way. I'm telling you, like it's a sit down thing with it's a League luncheon. It's a ladies luncheon. It's not like a political thing that you're used to. You just pop in and pop out. It's
Is
not
there
like
somebody
that.
that can go in your place or anything?
There's nobody that can go in my place. I'm not going to be able to go. So I'm sad to my League ladies. But somebody will eat my vegetarian plate, I'm sure. And it's still a donation to the League.
You also have a big concert coming up.
And I do. Yes, I do. I do. On the 10th, I'm going to see James Taylor and Jackson Brown together. It's it's the most perfect like merging. And the only thing that I can think of coming up past that I'm very excited about is Van Morrison is coming, which is also another.
And were there
huge one.
other opportunities to do some social media posting, as I like to say?
They will be. So let's talk about what we have coming up on Sunday.
So Sunday,
because I am missing my League lunch. So let's talk about why I'm missing my League lunch.
So Sunday, we are going to be doing a exclusive interview with Stella Morris, partner of Julian Assange. Get an update on what's going on with his situation, anything that we can do to help. And we are going to be speaking with, I think we would agree, is probably as good a person as you're going to find covering international news.
Yes.
In Rania Kalik.
I love me some Rania. First of all, she is somebody who like walks the walk in a way that nobody can understand. Try living in Beirut when you have like regular power outages. Like you only get rolling, like you only get power a certain amount of times. Like it's just, I can't even imagine. We have so many things here are so much easier just by the nature of being here. So we have Rania, Stella Morris and Rania Kalik on Sunday.
That'll be a great conversation. And then next Thursday is
Wednesday, right?
No.
Oh, no, next Thursday's Veterans Day. That's right.
So next Thursday, we are going to be doing a Veterans Day panel. We may get one more guest, but right now we are going to have Oliver Stone and Danny Sershin. So
Scherzen. It's
Scherzen.
SJ.
I can't say the
Scherzen.
Swedish names correctly.
I know, but
Try.
I practice Scherzen.
Two of the very best.
So yes, Oliver Stone is going to be here for Veterans Day. I don't even know that I can contain my little self. Like, I'm very excited about that. Like, first of all, and I am I'm not a history person, but I appreciate it. And there's certain things about it that I think are just, we really need to focus on and are important. But his untold history of the United States, like, for anybody who hasn't watched it, I believe it's like 4 or 5
great
parts.
book, great documentary.
It's I forget how many parts it is, and it's so good, and it really is a very interesting perspective. I do love him, so I'm very excited about that. So that's Veterans Day, and then next Sunday, the following Sunday we have, okay, but this is what I wanted to say. I think what we should start doing is, if I'm reading the books or listening to them, I want to give you guys an opportunity to read the books too, if it's available. Some of them, like, we get early copies. So this one,
Brian Klaas.
Okay, so first we're having him first. Okay, so Brian Klaas is coming on. This is his book. It's called Corruptible. And I am going to be, this is an advanced reader's edition because it's cool. That's one of the coolest things about this gig, is that I get things. But I am going to give this to Peter because I checked, and on that day, the audio comes out. So that would give me, it'll give me enough time to do it audio and for our interview with him. So you can have that. This is not available on audio, but we can wait until next time to talk about it. But so guys, the book we're reading,
Corruptible.
But the problem is it's not available to them until November 9th. So on November 9th, Corruptible. That's what I'm going to have, like, and I'm going to call it the Depressed Progressives Book Club, because a lot of these things are kind of sad, and but we have to find the inspiration. That was one of the things I liked about Andrew Yang's book.
Yes.
Is it's, here's the problems, here's some solutions.
Yeah, not just here's the problems. No,
and by the way, he's not someone that's going to say, these are the solutions and they're the only solutions, and if you don't agree with me, then it's my way or the highway.
Here's the solutions, and by the way, we're open to others as well.
See, person of reason.
And then finally, on November the 17th, which is going to be 2 weeks from today.
Right.
We are going to have our second congressional guest.
Oh, I saw that. I'm very excited about this.
So Congresswoman Marie Newman, who is up for re-election, is being redistricted.
Oh, yes. They're trying to get rid of her by redistricting. So
this is a very important podcast because we want to talk to her, a former BNCer as well. I want to talk to her about what it's going to take to make sure that she keeps her seat.
Yes.
And we are finally going to have a great admirer of Jen's.
I have an admirer?
Professor Harvey Kaye.
Okay.
Who is at the University of Wisconsin, Green Bay.
This will be the book that we will be discussing.
Take hold of our history.
And it's basically about our radical history and what we need to be doing. Make America radical again. See?
And this is coming from what once was, believe it or not, maybe the most radical state in the Union, Wisconsin. Wisconsin may be the Koch brothers' dream today, but it once was a state that went to the Socialist Party in multiple electoral elections. So the Electoral College went to the Socialist Party. Yes, that actually happened. So that said,
a lot of cool things.
We really appreciate.
And you'll forgive us, guys. If you weren't here in the beginning, I'm moving tomorrow morning, like 8 o'clock in the morning. Movers are going to be here and moving me out of my home that I've been in for 13 years. And it's going to take us a little while to get a studio up and running. So you'll have to forgive us because I believe that our next setup is basically going to just be in the guest room temporarily in my house.
Sam wants to let you know that he is available to come by on Sunday evening and is very interested in helping you with some design ideas.
Okay. As long as his design ideas are practical and not just, sassy.
Yes. And then of course, we'll try to lean on Anthony to get involved more.
I just need to know how much stuff I need to order. We need to it's in a garage and there's a huge echo. And so we got to do the floors and the walls and we need to but it will eventually, but temporarily we will sort of this will probably be following us around in a few different locations for a little while.
We'll do the best we can, but we appreciate
But our
you
content
guys.
will be quality. We're still having Oliver Stone on here, Veterans Day. I don't know. I'll have to come up with something good to hang up behind us.
Fair enough. We appreciate you all. Share it, like it, comment. Make sure you're subscribed. A lot of people getting unsubscribed. So make sure you're subscribed. Got to check that a lot.
And if you would be so kind to support
The Lulu sticker.
The Lulu.
If you become a patron, we really would appreciate your support. As you know, we do a lot of community outreach activities.
We do. And I also have, this is the other thing that I have right now. We got our homeless care kits.
We got the Gobble giveaway that's coming up with Mobile School Pantry.
Yeah.
We're also going to unite Renewable, which is the group doing the composting that I talked to you about. We got to go visit them. We really got to do that.
Oh, and we're getting a new community garden, which is going to be at Hallandale High School.
That's fantastic.
Yep.
Oh, so I would assume that Sabrina will hopefully be involved.
I don't know that has anything to do with her. I know that Mo and Aaron and Bern have been talking with.
That's fantastic. All right. So we got things happening, folks. We really appreciate you as always. See you Sunday afternoon in a new location.
It'll look exactly the same to them. That's what's so funny.
Good night, guys.